Somewhere in Africa, right now, a single elephant is standing in a field carrying enough meat to feed an entire village for an entire month. More meat than a dozen cows combined, walking on four legs. And yet, in the history of nearly every human civilization on Earth, almost nobody ever put that meat on a plate. That animal is smart enough to recognize its own reflection in a mirror. It can live for 70 years. And once, for one strange winter in a city under siege, it actually became dinner. Here is the question that sounds simple, but is not. If a single elephant carries more meat than an entire herd of cattle, why did almost no civilization on Earth ever build a food system around it? Stay until the end, because the real answer is not about taste or size or even danger. It is about something far stranger. And it almost went a completely different way. In a city you would never expect. Your first guess is probably this: it is too dangerous. Or maybe it is illegal. It is endangered. Nobody would dare. But danger has never stopped humans before. We hunted whales, twice the size of an elephant, across open ocean, using nothing but wooden boats and rope. We speared woolly mammoths, the elephant's own ancient cousins, into complete extinction. We have eaten bears, sharks, and crocodiles, animals that could kill us in seconds. So, too dangerous does not hold up. Something else is going on. And the story starts somewhere you would never guess. A starving city in the winter of 1870. Winter 1870. Paris is under siege. The Prussian army has surrounded the city for months. Food is running out. Bread is rationed. Rats are being sold openly in the markets. And the wealthy of Paris, the ones who can still afford a proper dinner, start looking somewhere nobody expects. The zoo. At the Paris Zoo's botanical garden, two elephants named Castor and Pollux had delighted Parisian children for years. As the siege dragged on, the zoo's owners made a decision that would have been unthinkable months earlier. The elephants were slaughtered. Their meat did not go to the desperate and the starving. It went to the finest restaurants in the city. On Christmas Day, 1870, one of the most famous restaurants in Paris served elephant soup and roasted trunk to diners willing to pay a small fortune for the experience. Newspapers wrote about it. People lined up to taste history's strangest delicacy. For one bizarre winter, elephant was fine dining. Then the siege ended. Supply lines reopened. Beef and bread came back. And elephant meat disappeared from Paris as fast as it had arrived, never to return to a single menu again. It was never really about taste. Diners who tried it described it as tough and gamey, nothing special. It was about desperation, dressed up as luxury. The moment normal food came back, nobody chose elephant over a simple roast chicken. But that raises the real question. Forget one desperate winter. Why did no civilization anywhere on Earth ever build a lasting food system around an animal this large?
Here is where the story turns scientific. Every animal you have ever eaten, chicken, cow, pig, sheep, succeeded because of an ancient, brutal equation. Your ancestors never wrote it down, but they always obeyed it. To turn any animal into a reliable food source, it has to check off a very specific list. It has to grow fast enough to be worth raising. It has to reproduce often. It has to survive on cheap, easy food. And it has to fit into a hierarchy that humans can dominate. An elephant fails almost every single test on that list. Start with growth. A cow reaches slaughter weight in about 18 months. A chicken in 6 weeks. An elephant takes 15 to 20 years just to reach full size. You would spend most of a human generation raising a single animal just to eat it once. Then there is reproduction. A cow can have a calf every single year. An elephant's pregnancy lasts 22 months, the longest of any land mammal on Earth. And after giving birth, she will not have another calf for 4 to 6 more years. Across her entire lifetime, one female elephant might produce 4 or 5 offspring total. A single cow could produce that many calves in 5 years alone. If you tried to farm elephants the way we farm cattle, you would not be building a food supply. You would be running the slowest, least efficient farm in human history. And you would starve, waiting for dinner to grow up. But even if you somehow solved the math, there is a deeper problem. The same one that quietly disqualified almost every large animal on the planet from domestication. Out of hundreds of large mammal species alive when humans started farming, we successfully tamed exactly 14. Cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, horses, camels. A short, strange list. Every other species failed for one recurring reason. Humans could never convince them who was in charge. Cows follow a dominant bull. Horses follow a lead mare. Once a human steps into that hierarchy and becomes the leader, the whole system works. Elephants do not have that kind of hierarchy for humans to exploit. They live in matriarchal herds built on decades of memory, loyalty, and emotional bonds, not the kind of dominance you can hijack with a fence and a whip. A mother elephant will charge a full-grown lion to defend her calf. She remembers her herd's history for 60 years. She grieves her dead, sometimes returning to the bones of a family member years later. You cannot insert yourself at the top of that. You cannot convince a grieving matriarch that you outrank her. Every species we successfully farmed, we farmed because we could become the boss. Elephants never let us. There is one more brutal number. An adult elephant eats up to 300 pounds of vegetation every single day. Just to keep one alive, you would need to feed it more than an entire herd of cattle combined. Remember the energy rule that governs every food chain on Earth. Each step up the chain costs almost 90% of the energy before it. An elephant is not a predator sitting at the top of that chain, but its sheer size means the math still does not work in reverse. You would be pouring enormous amounts of food into one animal for decades, for a return that never justifies the cost. Nature ran this calculation long before agriculture ever existed, and the answer it produced on every continent over and over again was always the same. Raise the animal that is cheap, fast, and small, not the one that takes a lifetime to grow and could crush the fence trying to leave.
Here is something almost nobody considers. Elephants can live 60 to 70 years, longer than almost any land animal alive, longer than most humans lived in earlier centuries. That long life means something happens quietly inside their bodies. Decades of environmental exposure, slowly building up. Heavy metals from soil and water. Pesticide residue absorbed through the plants they eat every single day for 70 years straight. It is the same principle that made scientists warn people away from eating old sea turtles. The longer an animal lives, the more of the world's chemistry it quietly stores inside itself. An elephant is not just an animal. After 7 decades, it is a living archive of everything that ever passed through the ecosystem around it. Every reason so far has been pure math. Growth rates, hierarchy, energy, toxins. But there is one final reason, and it is not biological at all. It is psychological, and it happened in plain sight, in front of the entire scientific world. Elephants are one of the only animals besides humans confirmed to recognize themselves in a mirror. They use tools. They comfort distressed herd members by gently touching them with their trunks. Females babysit each other's calves. They mourn. Researchers have documented elephants returning to the bones of dead family members years later, touching the skulls gently with their trunks, standing in what looks unmistakably like silence. The same instinct that makes your ancestors flinch at the thought of eating a wolf, an evolved gut-level resistance to consuming something that feels too much like us, fires even harder for an animal this emotionally complex. It is not a rule anyone ever wrote down. It is the same ancient circuitry that decided, without asking your permission, what belongs on your plate and what never will. And here is where the story turns dark. The one force that has actually driven elephants toward extinction was never appetite. It is ivory. Poachers rarely hunt elephants for meat. The tusks alone are worth more than the rest of the animal combined. Across Africa, tens of thousands of elephants are killed every single year, And in most cases, the meat is simply left behind to rot in the sun. The exact animal that was too large, too slow, and too complex to ever become food is being wiped out for a body part that humans do not even eat. The African elephant population has dropped by more than 60% in the last 50 years. Some researchers warn that without serious intervention, wild elephants could disappear from most of Africa within your lifetime. The animal that almost became dinner in a besieged city a century and a half ago might not survive long enough for the question to ever matter again. Let's push the hypothetical one step further. Imagine a version of history where the siege of Paris never ended. Imagine elephant farms actually took root, the way cattle ranches did across the American plains. Within a single generation, herds would have collapsed under their own slow biology. 15 years to raise one animal, 22 months just to carry one calf. Within decades, the wild population feeding those farms would have been hunted into the ground exactly the way it nearly was for Ivory alone. There is no version of this thought experiment that ends well, not for the elephants, not for the humans depending on them. The math was never on our side, no matter how badly a starving city once wanted it to be. So let's go back to your plate. The chicken, the beef, the pork. You never actually chose those. 10,000 years of biological math chose them for you long before you were even born. 14 species won a lottery they never knew they had entered. The elephant almost had its moment. One desperate winter in Paris. One strange Christmas dinner that nobody ever repeated. It had the size. It had the meat. But it failed every test that actually matters. Too slow to grow, too rare to reproduce, too intelligent to dominate, and carrying 70 years of the world's chemistry inside it. It did not lose because it was inedible. It lost because in every sense that matters, it refused to be owned. Somewhere in Kenya or Botswana right now, a herd of elephants is walking together across open grassland. A matriarch leads them. Somewhere in her mind, a memory of a dead calf still lingers. She has no idea that 150 years ago, in a city she has never heard of, two of her ancestors' relatives were once, briefly, considered a delicacy. And she has absolutely no idea there was ever a decision to make at all. If this changed the way you look at something as ordinary as dinner, subscribe to What If World. Every week, we ask the questions that sound simple and end up somewhere you never expected. And before you go, tell me in the comments, if every rule we just covered disappeared tomorrow, would you actually try it?